welcome you as a dad who's on the journey to being a great dad. We're here to inspire you, hopefully to encourage you, and it's also telling the story of other dads and letting other dads tell their story. I've got a really great man from Woolgoolga on the New South Wales North Coast here, father of two. He is a passionate dad and passionate to be a better dad, and they're the sort of guys I like to talk to because I always want to learn stuff myself as the CEO of Dads4Kids. So John, tell us a bit about yourself and your background.
Good morning, Warwick. Thanks for having me. I am English originally, came over to Australia '98, so a good long time ago now. I am a civil engineer by profession. Have mostly worked out on site rather than in the drawing office and the like. And so I am 50 years old now, two children, as you mentioned, Ocean and Keir, and beautiful wife Desiree. We live on the mid-north coast, and I work for myself, providing consulting services to local development industry and construction industry. Yeah, mostly work around this region, occasionally out in and around the state as well. That's about me. I play the violin, enjoy playing the violin. I don't enjoy running, but I do run to keep fit, which I find is quite important at my age. Keep the bones going and loose, and get the mind active.
Just curious, you play the violin. I'm a guitarist. You went up the grades, did you, on the violin? How did you go with that?
I did. My grandma taught me to play the violin. She was, I don't know if you know Coventry in the UK, but there was a cathedral there that was bombed during the war. But prior to it being bombed, she was the lead violinist of the Coventry Cathedral Orchestra. And so I was fortunate enough that she taught me from a very young age, and I did my grade 8 probably before I was 16, I think. And played in various orchestras and the like. But then when I went to university, I pretty much stopped playing classical music and got into playing with bands and the like. So, but I have recently got back into it. My children have started playing violin at school, so I've been helping them along and got back into playing classical myself.
Wow, it's a beautiful gift. It's a great gift to share with the family, isn't it? Don't you think?
Oh, it is, and. It's one of the things I most enjoy doing with the children, actually. It's got me back into playing. I've actually joined an orchestra off the back of my daughter joining an orchestra at the conservatorium in Coffs, and I help both of my kids with their lessons, although my daughter's getting better than me now, so that's going to probably not last too much longer. She'll be teaching me.
Wow, that's amazing. And when you played in bands, did you play violin or did you play another instrument?
No, I played the violin, yeah. Pretty much just ad-libbed most of the time, to be honest with you. Yeah.
Oh, that's fascinating. And tell us about your own family of origin.
So, Mum and Dad, I was born in the Midlands in the UK, in England. I've got a brother, a younger brother by a couple of years. My mum and dad were both war babies, and they were single. They didn't have any brothers or sisters. My dad did have a brother, but he passed away very, very young. So they were both only children. They're in their early 80s now, and they're still pretty active, as they have been all their life. My dad's only just stopped skiing.
Wow.
And I'm blessed. Yeah, they've been active all their life, and they're still quite healthy. Even through COVID, in their early 80s, they bought a new house and did some major renovations, and I guess did the equivalent of couch surfing while they were renovations were ongoing, because they had to sell the house they were in, and they just moved into the beautiful new house that they've finished. So they were active. They did everything that they could when my brother and I were children to give us every opportunity. I used to swim competitively. I've done my Duke of Edinburgh's Award Gold, thanks to my parents' encouragement. I played the violin, as I just mentioned. That was also a lot through my parents' encouragement. They used to take us on wonderful holidays, and they pretty much they worked hard, and with a view to making sure that my brother and I had every opportunity that they could afford for us to have. So I'm very blessed in that regard, yes. And I always remember we used to sit down every single night at the dinner table, so that was also something that I know a lot of families don't do, and so at the time I didn't appreciate the importance of it, but I certainly do now.
Yeah, I've written an article, 10 reasons why families should eat together, and there's just a whole bunch of practical reasons. I think it just that they've proven that if you eat with your children, a regular basis, as in daily, and the TV's turned off and other things and out, mobile phones are pushed to the side, the children are going to do better at school. They're less likely to get involved in drugs and bad behaviour. They're just going to be more successful. And there's a whole host of very scientific reasons to eat together. Besides, it's fun, and you build those family memories and that communication that takes place around the dinner table. It's something very precious, isn't it?
It certainly is, yes. And we endeavour to do it as we probably don't do it every single night here, but we do most nights. And it's a wonderful time of the day. You get to catch up and talk about what's happened in your day. So we have a routine. We talk about what are the what are the yucky parts of your day, what are your happy parts of the day, what's something you've learned, and what's something you're grateful for. And we try and go around the table and talk about that. And it's good. You get to understand what's important to your children.
Wow, that's really powerful, John. Congratulations on that. So tell me, John, we're going back a little bit in time, but how did you feel when your first baby was born? And was that the boy or was that the beautiful girl?
That was the girl, my daughter Ocean, yeah. So she's 12, she's nearly 13 in July, so nearly 13 years ago. How did I feel? Wow. I was blown away. It was a wonderful, I can remember holding her now. Unfortunately, my wife had some complications with the birth and had to have epidurals, and they didn't work, and she got holes in the spine and everything. So I actually was quite involved in the very early days of my daughter's life, it was a wonderful experience. And I remember thinking, because I was 38 when my daughter was born, which is quite old these days. I've obviously spent a lot of time doing things for me, and I guess being quite hedonistic, I suppose. And then when all of a sudden, when your daughter comes along, you realise it's not just about you anymore. And so that overwhelming feeling of, wow, I've got some huge responsibility here. I've got to look after this little thing, and it's all up to me and my wife. So it was a beautiful time, but also a huge reality check.
Yeah, wow. And what was your single biggest challenge as a young father? You mentioned that your wife was sick. That sounds like a pretty big challenge in itself, doesn't it?
Yeah, it was. Her birth went on for some time. We originally were going to have a birth in Bellingen Hospital, but they weren't able to cope in the end, and we had to get the ambulance down to Coffs, and the doctor wanted to give a cesarean, but fortunately we'd been warned about this doctor, and it was something my wife really didn't want to happen, and so I was able to guide her wishes, let's say, and she in the end she was able to have a natural birth, but it was with the aid of an epidural, and unfortunately that epidural caused her to have a hole in her spine. It didn't heal properly, and that gave her huge headaches for the early days, and so I was in the hospital for every day for looking after Ocean, while Desiree got some rest and recouped. But we were lucky. Desiree soon recovered, and when she was off home, within a couple of weeks back to normal. So like I said earlier, I think one of the biggest challenges was actually realising that this is not about me anymore by any stretch of the imagination. It's just not about me anymore. It's about growing this child into something that I hope would be better than me.
Yeah, it's a funny how that realisation does hit you, and it's funny how it can take a little while to hit you. I think for women, the very act of carrying the baby for that 9 months is a sacrifice, is pain, is discomfort, and then of course you go through the pain, and blood, sweat, tears, quite literally. So they've really gone through the baptism of fire. They are committed to being committed because they are committed. And it seems to me, John, like your comment about this, it seems like we have to learn commitment. Correct? Is that your sort of thoughts? Do you think that's a crazy idea or not?
No, I don't think it is a crazy idea. And look, I think we're all different. Somebody asked me not too long ago, when did I become a man? And I don't think I became a man until quite recently. I think I was a big kid running around pretending to be a man. And so I'd imagine that some men take on that responsibility a lot easier than others, and I was certainly one of the ones that didn't take that commitment, learn that commitment, through my wife's pregnancy. I certainly didn't, and it was only at the birth and shortly thereafter that I realised that there was that commitment. But so for me, it was definitely something I needed to learn. Yes, absolutely, and I've been learning it ever since. Your commitment changes. You're always going to have the commitment of bringing up your children, but as they get older, it changes as they change, and you've got to. Now my daughter's nearly 13. My commitment is very different to what it was those 13 years ago. It's more about giving her some autonomy and allowing her to grow as a woman. So the commitment is still there to obviously make to support her and encourage her, but it's quite different to what it was 13 years ago. So you're always learning.
Yeah, it's this whole issue of, again, you've referring to this issue of men who are little boys, in the sense of they think life is all about them. I wish personally I'd had a rites of passage ceremony when I was 12 or 13, and that's something that I'm a big advocate for now. But it strikes me that we've got a lot of men here in Australia and around the world, in the Western world in particular, that basically have never really grown up, because they still think life is about them. And you and I know, if we go through life thinking it's about us, it's actually quite a narrow viewpoint, because it's not just about us. Yes, we are important, but other people are important. Our wife's important, children are important, our family's important, and there's a sense where we need to learn how to, this idea of commitment. We need to learn how to sacrifice, and that's something that needs to be instilled at a much younger age than we're instilling it now. Would you agree with that statement?
Absolutely, I would, and the transition to adulthood is something that I'm particularly focused on at the moment, with my son being 11 and daughter 13. That rite of passage, as you mentioned, is vitally important. It's not something that I ever went through. It was just normal at the time, just to grow up, and you just sort of went along in your life. And I have regret that I didn't grow up into a man at an earlier age. I wonder what my life would be like now if I had had that rite of passage and grown up into a man at an earlier age. I mean, as I mentioned earlier, I prior to getting married, and I think I was quite hedonistic, and it was really all about me, and I don't believe I seized every opportunity that I was given, and there is an element of regret there, but all I can do now is hope that I move forward with better intentions, and perhaps through doing things like this might trigger something in some younger men and younger fathers, that they have a think about where they are, and they have a think about whether they need to step up and be that man and go through a rite of passage themselves.
Yeah, no, it's a big subject actually, and thanks for bringing that up. As your children got older, and of course there's always challenges, but can you what was your single biggest challenge, do you think, as they grew older?
It's really growing with them. that I think, you know, they've always looked up to me and their mum as you know, somebody in who they believe 100% everything that they say, and who they love, and who they turn to for everything. But now I think the biggest challenge is around me now, because they're getting to the age now where they want that autonomy. They want to become who they are, and so with my daughter.
How old is she now? How old is your daughter?
She's 13. She's 13. So, but she went through a stage late last year where she became a woman, and I basically went overnight from hero to zero. It was a kick in the guts. It really was, and I was astounded about how profound the change was in her, and that for me was a huge challenge, and all I could do was just recognise where she was in her life and just roll with it, I guess. Just make sure she knows that I'm there for her. I still insist that she gives me a hug every night and every morning, and I go and tuck her in every night, and we maintain that physical contact. But I also have to recognise that I've got to give her that space. And my lad is just embarking on that phase now as well. So there's that, and there's also the conversations. We need to normalise conversations around. We need to maintain intimacy with our children. We need to normalise conversations around, sex and the changing body, and also the perils of this. The environment in which they're growing up in, things like pornography, and we need to be able to open up conversations so that your children find them normal, so that they can come to you and talk to you about them. For me, that's quite a challenge, because it's not something that I ever went through with my parents. I remember my dad, and I remember my dad trying to have that conversation about sex with me, and he turned to me in the car one day and he said, "I think we need to have a chat." And I regret saying this, but I shut him down because it was so uncomfortable for me. And I said to him, "Dad, I think I know more about it than you do." And I regret that, because he was reaching out to me in the way that he thought that he needed to. And it was an opportunity for us to connect on a more intimate level that I just basically threw away. So I don't want those types of conversations to be difficult for my children, and me and my wife want to normalise them. So that's a challenge.
It is actually hard, and we're looking at sponsoring a program that actually is teaching young people between 12 to 18 about the perils of the whole pornography issue, the sexting issue. I mean, young children, 11, 12, or actually even younger now, are sending images of their private parts to their friends. And I mean, this is quite common amongst younger people today, and it's the pressure, the bullying, the social media. So we actually have to have these conversations much earlier, and it's important that you and I have these conversations with our children as opposed to other people. Does it make sense?
It is. That's exactly right. And look, through the Courageous Fathering course, there was a session on the perils of pornography, amongst other things, and it was through that I realised that both my children were at the same school at the time. I realised through that session that the way that the school had recently dealt with a pornography issue was entirely inappropriate. So this is a good news story coming out of me attending the Courageous Fathering course. I'm on the board of the school, and it was the first time that pornography had ever been brought up in the school by students, and so the school was at a bit of a loss, I believe, as to how to deal with it. But with technology as it is these days, it was inevitable that it was going to start infiltrating the school at younger and younger ages. So at the time, the schools I won't say the school's approach, but I will say the leadership's approach was that, look, children are inquisitive, it's going to happen, and it's just part of life. And through going through the courageous fathering session about it and seeing what it had done to men, hearing them recount their stories, I was able to go back to the school and say, no, this is wrong. This is what it can do to children, and this is what it can do as they grow older, and who it affects and the like. And through that, I was able to introduce, with the blessing of the teacher and the education support, a program that was able to teach the perils of pornography and information technology, security around information technology, and that kind of thing. So, and we've got a new headmaster now, and he's actually taking it on board now as a whole school initiative. So, that's a good news story coming out of my attendance at Courageous Fathering.
Wow, that's just fantastic. What is your favourite thing you do with your children? I think you've already sort of told us that, but tell us again, because I'm a musician, I like to hear it. What's your favourite thing you do with your kids?
Yeah, I thoroughly enjoy playing the violin with them. It's great, to see them progress, week after week is just wonderful, and to the point now that, my son's closing in on probably giving me lessons in the not too distant future, as is my daughter. She's a couple of years further down the track than him, so she's playing stuff now that I really have to think about. But it's also about keeping their interest, because I know as a child that age that sometimes it gets hard with all the homework and everything else that's going on in life to want to practice as often as you should. And so I was sitting down with Desiree one night because they weren't practicing as much as they should, and I was trying to work out how we could instill a little bit of excitement back into the violin playing. So I downloaded a score from the Killers, one of the Killers songs, and I learnt it, and just purely out of the blue one afternoon I started playing it in my bedroom, and my daughter came rushing in. She was just so over the moon that you could actually do that kind of thing on a violin, and it reignited some passion in her. So yeah, definitely playing the violin and doing things other than scales and classical music with them, and doing a bit of ad-lib, that type of stuff, and playing some popular music is a passion, sure, and something I love doing with them.
Is there any other story, just one story that stands out? You told us one about you playing that song, getting that band, the Killers, which are a pretty popular band, and playing that song and sort of, if you like, sort of catching your daughter's interest and helping her realise that violin is a bigger instrument than just orchestral. Any other quick stories that just sort of stand out, or one story?
There's, Desiree and I have always talked about the book of our life, and I think that there's so many sentences and paragraphs and chapters that go to make up that book of our life, that there's it's the little stories, it's the little things that matter to me. I was driving my lad to school the other day, and he was just looking at me in the front seat, and he just looked at me with encouragement and big eyes and with a smile on his face and excitement. And it's just little things like that, Warwick, that build the story of our life. I don't think there's any one big story that I could recount. It's just lots of little stuff that happens. It just amazes you every day what they're capable of, and and the excitement that they get from just spending time with you, and especially when you take those moments to say, right, I'm all yours. You've got an hour. In my busy, everyone's busy, but you try and allocate some time with them. You turn around and say, right, you've got an hour. Let's do exactly what you want to do. There's no phone, there's no computer, as far as I'm concerned. Let's, and my son gets out his Pokemon, and we play a couple of games of Pokemon, and just the excitement that he shows when you just do simple things like that is just, it's wonderful. So just little stories like that, when you dedicate your time and you are solely focused on them. It's just, another thing that come out of the Courageous Fathering course was how children spell love, and it's Time, and there's nothing more true than that.
Children spell love Time, and it is true. Um, you are passionate, and I remember talking to you some time ago, and I think even before you did the Courageous course, there was some sort of passion in you for being a dad and for being a husband. Can you tell us why? Have you sort of been able to sort of dig into that and find out where that came from?
I've always, much the same as my parents, I've always wanted to do the best, obviously, for my family, for my children. I'll be honest, prior to doing the Courageous Fathering course, I really didn't have much of a direction as to how that should eventuate, other than to rely upon what I knew from my family of origin. As I said, I was probably still a big kid. I needed to become the man and step up and become the man, to be the father I wanted to be. And it was through Dads4Kids that I've always had an element of faith. I've had encounters with the Lord through my life, but it wasn't until I did the Courageous Fathering course in 2020 that it really ignited my faith. And it was through that coming to faith that everything started to make sense, that it gave me that grounding that I needed in order to become the parent, the father that I wanted to be able to give everything that I can to my children. And my passion has just since gone from strength to strength. I've wanted to learn from other dads. I've wanted to learn from other mentors and coaches, facilitators like yourself. And I just find that through doing that, the passion just keeps going. You learn so much from other people, and to get on the courses and to communicate with other men, and to learn that it's okay to make mistakes, but you need to just get back up and keep going again, so the passion, I've just since doing the original Courageous course, I've done the summit a couple of times. I've done the course again, and it's the second time I was able to help facilitate it, which is something that's way outside of my comfort zone. So the passion to become a better dad and to help other men become better dads has actually driven me to do things that are way outside of my comfort zone. But if I can help to encourage men to be the best men that they can be and be the best fathers they can be, and to get out of life that passion, that's what's driving me at the moment, to be honest with you, Warwick.
It's really beautiful, actually. And what about being a husband? What's the biggest challenge you've faced? Biggest challenge you've faced being a husband?
Yeah, again, it's all about being a big kid and stepping up to be a man. And I keep coming back to the original Summit and Courageous Fathering course that I did. I don't think if it wasn't for me attending those, I don't actually think I would be here now. My wife and I, through my fault, I have had some challenges. I've able to face those challenges. One of the and try to bring us back onto a solid foundation. My wife always talks about that we should be a peg in the ground around which we can move and our children can move, but we still have that peg in the ground in the centre that they can always come back to, or we can always come back to. Always talk about having that solid foundation. So we're one of the biggest challenges for me was to open up in communication with my wife. Again, I think it just stems back from my family of origin, where perhaps there wasn't a level of intimate communication, so I'm not used to it. It's something that scares me. So that's one of the biggest challenges, is to sit down and actually just put my heart on my sleeve and be open and normalise difficult conversations with my wife.
Mind you, not alone, John, because intimate conversation scares the tripe out of most men. Because women actually want that intimate. They not just want intimacy from a sexual point of view. They actually, in fact, they more need intimacy in conversation, in communication, in sharing heart to heart, thought to thought, honest feeling. And it's just hard for us men to do that. It's not something that comes naturally to us because, in a sense, we're taught to not show our heart as young boys and growing up as teenagers, and it's like a sign of weakness, if you like, or it's a sign of there's something wrong with you. And so, and blokes sort of tend to live in an unreal world, So I can remember on the building site, John, and you've been on the building site as a civil engineer. My background's carpentry and also building construction and supervision, but the sort of conversation was basically around sort of sex, beer, cars, sport, and all the varieties in between, but not much else. Now, yes, I'm not saying some of those things aren't important, but life is a lot more than just those things. And as far as the intimacy of sex, that's never discussed amongst blokes, that what it really means to really love a woman in a beautiful way and to give yourself to a woman in a very beautiful way. And so you had to sort of deal, it sounds like you actually had to learn that, like I've had to learn it. So again, you're not alone, but I do believe as men we have to learn that process, and the best way to learn is from other men. Would you agree with that?
It is to learn from other men and to hear their stories about how they've achieved it, and, or indeed just working on it, because it is a continual process of working on it. Yes, definitely. The opportunity to communicate with other men is vitally important, and as we go older, as a kid, I had some very, very close friends in the UK. I'm actually still friends with them, but obviously the tyranny of distance means that we don't catch up as often as we did. I've got some very good friends in Sydney, but again, the tyranny of distance means I don't get to see them as often as I otherwise would like. But it turns out that as we get older, and we get busier in life, and men just don't end up catching up as often as they should. And that means that when they do catch up, there's not, it's a lot spoken about, but it doesn't get to that level of intimacy that it perhaps needs to get to, because, you're only out for a couple of hours, maybe catching up down the beach, or you're going for a pint or whatever. It doesn't get to that level of intimacy that it needs to get to. So, through doing online courses like Courageous, you get to know men over the 10 weeks or so, and you get to talk on a level that's far more intimate than you otherwise might in general life, and it's learning about their journey and learning from them. Yes, is vitally important, and a big booster.
Just a bit of backstory about Courageous. So the Courageous we did. So we've got a physical 10-week course that's done in groups of 5 or 6 guys. You might have 10 or 12 or 15, but they're always in groups of 5 or 6. And it's done over 10 weeks with video and interaction, questions, discussion. Then we created the Courageous course really for guys who would just do stuff online. We always knew it could be done as groups, but we weren't thinking in that term. Little were we thinking about doing it digitally. And I remember early in 2020, Peter Lim and Paul Assig came to me and said, "Warwick, we can run the Courageous course through Zoom, and we think it'll be great." I said, my first reaction was, "Guys, it's not going to work. You need to be in the same room. You need to be there. It's body language, and it's being able to have a cup of tea together and all that sort of thing, or a coffee or whatever it is." And and they persevered. They said, "Look, Warwick, we believe it's going to work. Let us give it a try." So, I said, "Okay, just give it a trial." And honestly, I'm being surprised, very surprised how well it works. And you are a testimony and a story to that, because you've never done actually like a group type setting in a real physical sort of world, so to speak. But this courageous course, 10-week courageous course, it it brings guys together and they break into small groups. They watch the video, break into small groups, discussion, sharing, they talk about their homework, what they do, and everything else. It's quite a powerful thing, isn't it? Do you want to tell us a bit about that?
Oh, it's incredibly powerful. Yeah, it's obviously, as you alluded to, it would be preferable to meet in person. But it's just the way of the world at the moment, particularly through COVID, that these technologies are the way people are actually communicating, and through the 10 weeks, you get to know these men so well. They talk to you about things that, on the last course I was on, I was talking to men who have, at the end of recounting a story, have said, I've never actually spoken about that before. I've never talked to anybody about that before. So there's, despite the fact that you are only communicating through the computer, there's a level of intimacy generated between you all that allows men to open up. I think because you are like-minded men, you're there for the same reason. You're there to become better fathers and better dads, better men, and so there's a level of trust that's built up reasonably quickly, and then and then you set up groups on WhatsApp and you continue to communicate through the week so that communication is ongoing, and it's a great process. Despite, as I said, being only through the online medium, but the level of the barriers that are broken down and the level of trust that's generated is fantastic. And
just sort of encapsulating, I've heard you say a number of times the Courageous course really helped me massively, and you went back last year and you actually helped run a Courageous course, and there's nothing like running. If you want to learn, the best way to learn is actually not just to learn, but actually to teach what you've learned, because then it becomes part of you, and then work with other guys in that process. And I learn every time I've done a fatherhood course with blokes. Even though I've created the fatherhood course, I learn from them. Has that been the case with you?
Oh, absolutely. As I said, I think I only stepped up to become a man very recently, and so I had a lot to learn. The course that I helped facilitate, but is actually attended by people in my group that had far more experience than me in those environments. One was in men's ministry. Another was leading camps. Ministry camps, and I found myself quite out of my depth, so there was so much to learn, but it was all about listening as well. It's all about listening and hearing what people had to say, and then I had so much to learn. To hear that you're still learning is is amazing, and I look forward to the next course that I'm able to attend, and I've actually thrown myself into another couple of courses. Through Dads4Kids I met Alan Meyer, so to help, coming back to one of the challenges of being a husband, and want to help break down those barriers of communication and intimacy with my wife. I did the Valiant Man and she did the Understanding of Valiant Man, so that's allowed us to have a bit of common ground to come together on that level. And so continually learning and continually look for areas to go and learn from.
Well, I've got a saying, John, you stop learning, you start dying. You can teach an old dog new tricks, and you need to keep on growing and keep open to learning, and no matter what age you are, because there's always more to learn. And especially being a dad, being a husband. I'm still trying to work on that one. A less than perfect husband. by a fairly long way, and I've got an amazing wife who's been very patient. I remember, John, I asked this farmer who had a friend of mine, Greg Jasper, he's got 9 children, and I said to him, you know, what's the secret to your great marriage? And they did have they've got a great marriage, him and Anthea. And he said, well, Warwick, it's a forgiving wife. So why should people give to Dads4Kids? Dads4Kids is a charity. Most of what we do costs much more than what we ever get in. We send in a weekly newsletter out to guys all over Australia. We're providing resources on the website. There's a daily dad there where mothers and fathers and grandfathers, single dads talk about these issues and put information out there every week. We do courses, the Courageous course you've said, the Good to Great 10-week course. We're working on a course for people inside prisons, which is called Dads4Kids Inside Out. So, we are involved in trying to encourage dads and help dads. So why should blokes who are listening to this consider putting hands in their pocket and making a tax-deductible donation, and better still, a monthly donation? Why do you think they should do that?
Well, Warwick, you can't put a price on what you do, it's really important that you continue to do what you do, and that men, support what you do in any way that they can, because I can only speak from my personal experience, and somebody changed the way that I've changed through doing what you do. The world, and continue to do that, the world's just going to become a better place. It's not so. I feel like I've changed, and hopefully through my testimony, and I can help other men change, and it's just vitally important that we become the best men that we can become, and if we can rely upon resources like yourself to do that, Warwick, then, as I said, the world's going to become a better place, and not just for now but for generations.
Yeah, so our saying that we've recently only this last year added to the website, and that was talking with a management consultant who was trying to analyse who we are and saying, well, you've got to try to tell your story better. And he actually lives in Coffs Harbour, by the way, just down the road from where you are in Woolgoolga. And he came up with this phrase: building men, growing fathers, changing generations. And we just thought, yep, that's what we're doing. If you wanted to put it in 6 words, building men, growing fathers, changing generations. So when people invest in Dads4Kids, they're not just investing in one man, they're investing in one man who's growing to be a good father, who's going to train his kids and give them the best start in life, because it's all the stats show that if dad's there for the kids, if dad's involved in helping them with the schoolwork, involved with the violin training, involved in them, they're eating together as a family, the love is there in the family, the husband and wife are getting on. Yes, they might have challenges, but they're actually resolving those challenges, they're working together. Those children are going to be way ahead. The actual IQ rate goes up. There's so many benefits of a dad being involved, that the children become more self-assured, they're able to be more successful, they're going to have a better job, their academic studies, grades go up. It's just so many things that go right when dad's right. So if we can build men to become good fathers, we grow those fathers, we can actually see real change in our society for the benefit of our children. Is that correct?
Yes, absolutely correct, Warwick. It's for the kids to be able to see what a real man is about, the way he treats his wife, the way he treats his family and neighbours and those around him. It is that's what they want to see. And that's going to influence them for the rest of their lives. And then they will go on to be the best men they can be, and it goes on and on and on. It's just the foundations for the future.
What's one tip you can give to blokes out there about having a good relationship with their wife? What's just that one thought?
Communication. That's it. It's the basis of everything. Good communication.
Now that means that men have got to speak, correct? They can't just be silent, can they? They can't. They've got, yeah. So there's two sides to communication, and if I remember rightly, we've got two ears and one mouth. Is that correct? So the ratio of communication is 2 to 1.
100%.
Listening more, speaking less, and yet we also, as men, have to learn to speak and to share our heart with the woman of our dreams. That's what you're really saying, isn't it?
Absolutely. Listen and communicate. So yes, correct. That's it. It's the foundation for everything.
Okay, the 3 tips. What would you say to men today who are listening to this Dads4Kids video podcast show? What are the 3 things you'd say to them about being a dad that you've learned? What are the 3 tips you'd give them?
I'm going to cheat a little bit here because my first one is actually the fatherhood bus, which is 3 in itself.
Look, I don't mind you cheating, by the way, because I cheat all the time.
And that is to be there for them, for the children, to give them unconditional love, show them unconditional love, and to help them feel special. That's my first tip. My second tip is to love and honour their mother, empower her, and show them how important she is. My third tip is to bring some spiritual leadership into the relationship, into the family, and to have faith.
So number 1 is 3, which is get on the bus, the fatherhood bus, which is B is being there, U is unconditional love, S is making your children feel special. The second thing is, I've just forgotten, what is it again? Tell me.
To love and honour your wife and to show the children how important that she is.
That's very important, that empower her, to release her and empower her and honour her, and actually in their presence, correct?
Absolutely.
Because they've got to know
exactly
how a
right.
real man treats a woman, and how they're going to learn except from you, and how they're going to learn unless you do it. So yes, you're 100%.
That's right. But equally, my daughter needs to see how a proper man treats a lady, because if she doesn't have that training, if she doesn't have that example, she will accept the first cab off the rank, correct? Yes, absolutely.
But if she sees you as a father loving and honouring and caring and listening and communicating with, and this beautiful relationship, that there's this mystery of this intimacy of what marriage really is, and the joy of it and the challenges of it, but the joy of it and the fruit of it, she knows what the real thing is. And it's like I always think of the chalkboard. When there's a sound that the chalk makes on blackboard, it's horrible. It's a screechy sound, and when she'll hear that screechy sound in a relationship with a young man, and this man's not treating her like you did, she's going to say, "Sorry, see you later, boy. Off you go. I want someone like my dad."
That's right. That's exactly right. So it's not just about the sons growing up, setting an example for them. It's about their daughters too.
And the last thing was showing spiritual leadership in the home, and giving direction, and having a foundation. Does that make sense?
So yeah, absolutely. As I said, I came to faith quite reasonably recently. I'm early on my walk, but my wife's had faith all her life, and so now the two of us are able to share that faith and to set some examples for our children, and to bring a lot more faith into the home together. and it forms the rock of everything. From that, all
Foundations are very, very important. So look, John, it's been a delight to talk to you. It's a delight to hear your advice, to hear your thoughts, to share your stories with us. And I'm hoping and believing that many men will be encouraged and inspired, and that they too will consider maybe doing a courageous online course, consider coming and getting involved in the summit. It'll be later this year in August, but usually it's once in the middle of the year at Stanmore Tops. And again, thank you. It's a joy to talk to you. God bless you.
It's a pleasure, Warwick. It's lovely to talk to you too.
Not a
God
problem.
bless you too.
All the
Speak to you
best.
soon.